that Cat Bailey?
Is that Frank Cifaldi?
Yes, it is. Hi.
Hey.
I like to surprise Frank by not letting him know who the guests
Yeah,
are.
I never know who the guest is until I'm here.
It's your old pal, Cat Bailey.
It is.
My former boss, former editor.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of true, yeah.
Yep.
It's literally true, I guess. Yeah.
It is literally true.
Pat, let me give you my spiel. Welcome to the show. If you feel like saying something but we won't shut up, just talk over us and our editor will sort that out. Similarly, don't be afraid of like awkward silences while you think of something to say, because our editor can sort that out too.
They can't hurt you.
Okay.
I thought you were just telling her not to be like socially scared by awkward silences.
Yeah, in general, that's good general advice.
That's when you know someone's a friend, is when you can just be quiet together.
Oh, I have no friends.
Bless.
What a revelation.
Oh, very funny.
Baby, I want Klonoa. This is episode 287 of the Insert Credit Show, a podcast where a panel of experts must address a sequential series of video game topics and get to the point or face a horrible buzzer. I'm Alex Jaffe, and a video game item I never buy is any kind of potion that only restores your magic points.
Oh, that's weird.
I'm Frank Cifaldi, and a video game item I never buy. I'm not going to say never, but I avoid potions because I'd like to believe that the game is designed to where I don't need to cheat, but that's almost never true, so then I end up buying a bunch of potions. But I always try to not buy potions.
Right.
I want to trust that there's a game design happening here, and then usually I'm disappointed.
I'm Jim Rogers, and a video game item I never buy is... Here's a problem. You're talking to a guy who has played over 200 RPGs in the last 2 years. For a reason. There's no umbrella type of item I don't buy. I would just like to say that it sounds like Frank Cifaldi would enjoy playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake on hard mode, where you're not allowed to use items, and you can only heal using the abilities that are usable with the ATB bars that you build up by fighting.
Yeah, you've recommended this to me before, or at least in general, and I think I probably agree.
It's very fun. It's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, with Final Fantasy for PhDs, is what it feels like.
Is that your answer, Tim?
I think that's your answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying I bought them all.
That's valid.
I'm Brandon Sheffield, and I don't usually buy items at all in games because I don't tend to...
Yeah, do it.
I'm one of those people that gets scared of using them, and so I wind up having too many. But in Final Fantasy 15, where I was determined to enjoy the game despite having no interest in learning how to play it, I bought potions all the time because it was easier to spam a potion button than to figure out how to heal with magic, or theoretically, probably there was a way. I never looked and found out.
There's a way to do it, I believe.
There's probably, I mean, I would
It's
assume...
impossible to articulate in hindsight because
I would assume there's a way, but...
that game was a mess. It was designed by like a time traveler from 1942 asked to design a massively multiplayer online RPG.
That's right, massively multiplayer.
It's not
offline.
even massively multiplaer.
Yeah.
It's not even online. Very weird game.
Massively single player.
Yeah, so usually I don't, but in Final Fantasy 15, I bought potions, high potions, all kinds of potions. I bought them.
So anything other than potions is what you're saying.
Yeah, and like something I would never buy is like eye drops, cure blindness. I'm not gonna buy any of those status update
I would
ones.
simply not be blinded.
Yeah, exactly. Or I'll just wait till the battle's over and then I'll be fine.
Again, I've played more than enough JRPGs to know there's a time and a place, and every once in a while you're going to end up buying one of everything in every game. You got to keep your mind flexible. So I bought them all. If I were from a South American country, I'd be from Guatemala. That's
Nice.
my joke there. Thank you.
It's a good one. Our guest this week is IGN news director and developer of Axe of the Blood God, Cat Bailey.
Yes, hello. I also have bought a lot of RPG items, but the one that I never buy, I'm actually playing Final Fantasy V at the moment, and I just...
Oh, it's a sweet one.
Just unlocked the ninja class, and I'm getting a lot of shurikens, being invited to buy various items I can throw, and I'm like, I'm not going to throw items. Then it would be expended. I don't want to throw items, so I will not buy them.
They're being classified as items is a curiosity of that game. There's no separate tab for them. They're just in there with the potions and the the ethers.
Well, that's a early 90s inventory design for you.
Yeah, just get it all in there. The garbage bucket style of inventory design.
It's a little chum bucket of items.
Frank,
Yeah.
you won last week's episode of Insert Credit.
Good for me.
Yeah, and the reward for winning is you have to come up with a question for next week's episode. Frank, did you come up with a question?
Sure.
Great. Let's hear it.
Oh, okay. So here on the Insert Credits show, I think we basically have a consensus here, equally among all of us, that British games suck, right? Right, everyone?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oi gov. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
With the possible exception of Sonic R.
Yeah.
Plock
okay.
is good, though.
Well, hang on. Hold those answers, because my question is, okay, genuinely, what are some good games that were made by British people?
We did a whole episode on this.
We did a Best
we?
British Games episode, Frank.
You weren't here, Frank.
I wasn't here, so why don't you go ahead and recite?
Maybe you were. Was he?
I don't know. Do you think I remember any of these shows?
I certainly was not.
Look, I was playing Cannon Fodder this morning. It was all right. That's
Cannon Fodder's all right. Yeah.
That's where I'm coming
No,
from.
I mean, there's some hot ones. Those Batmans obviously are good.
Yeah, that's my other answer. Those are my two.
I like any Pickford Bros joint.
I like the Pickford Bros.
Solar Jetman. I'm a big fan of Equinox, also known as Solstice 2,
Mm-hmm.
which is a game you can't mention without someone
Solstice.
reciting the name of the composer of the title screen music, which everybody,
Is it Tim Fallon?
Yeah, we didn't have to say it out loud, but it's that guy.
I was being the guy.
Know about this guy? Oh, Equinox. Oh, great theme song. Game sucks,
Tim
though.
Fallon is cool, though.
Yeah, sure. There's nothing wrong with
The
it.
name that came up in my head was just like Nintendo guitar sounds.
Yeah. That's
Second.
that's a legacy, Jerry. That's a good one.
I love the Bitmap Bros games, especially Chaos Engine, but all those ones. But some ones that I didn't mention last time are things like Judge Dredd on the Genesis is good.
Oh yeah.
That Alien 3 on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, they have like different maps, so they're both good in different ways, and they're like super speed runnable games. Those are like the weirder, more not weirder, but the more insert credity I feel, because they're like less popular choices, perhaps. Obviously, I like Sonic R. Sumo Digital took over the Outrun series. Like, those are all good. I don't know. There's a lot of good British stuff. We like to make
in terms
fun
of legacy Brit games. So first of all, I like Plock, which is SNES. I also like. I think the early Rareware NES games are good.
Like Snake Rattle and Roll?
Battletoads.
Battletoads blows. I hate Battletoads.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
I played a lot of Battletoads. I know it's not a great game.
I beat it long ago.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a loser now. That's why I've got nothing left.
But it was on the cover of Nintendo Power.
It was.
It had its own comic and everything.
Everything else. It was the predecessor to Bubsy, I find, where it's just
Bubsy's much worse than Battletoads.
Ooh, really? I think Bubsy is...
I'm not talking about game quality. I'm talking about marketing. I'm talking about preemptive PR with these video game magazines.
Yeah. In terms of they were slipping the muffins under the table, the free muffins and
They
coffee.
were slipping the toad, if you know what I mean.
Oh man, Slippy Toad. Yeah, good. Speaking of Brit games, Argonaut, they're British, aren't they? Star Fox.
Star Fox is a British game, as far as I'm concerned.
Croc, Legend of the Gobbos.
Yeah.
Well, Croc.
Well, Star Fox would be a British game if there were no characters in it.
It's true.
If it were just
That's exactly it. That's like Donkey Kong Country is not like a pure Rare game.
Yeah.
You know, like it would be like you're dismissing the Miyamoto touch on these things if you're saying they're purely
the
British.
Star Fox Adventures, not British. Dinosaur Planet, British, right? Right? I think, like, if you want the quintessential good Brit games, I'm talking about Slalom by Rare. You ever play Slalom?
Wow.
That's a Brit game, dude. And that's Slalom, that's Rare, that's Nintendo. That's a beautiful 60 FPS. Delicious simplicity. Just a beautiful video game. It's just I don't know. I love it.
Highlander on the Jaguar CD, obviously. That's one.
You ever
that we
see
all
the
like.
arcade cabinets with the skis?
Oh yeah. A Cobra Triangle is another one. Another Rare NES game that I think is legit good. RC Pro-Am. Those are Brit games in that the personality is only evident in intrusive user interfacial interjections, you know? And when it appears, it's like a what? Slalom, why the guy got such a big butt? right? What's with that face, man?
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, you play something on the old Amiga, games romanticized by freaks and fools.
Like Cannon Fodder.
Cannon Fodder is actually pretty legit.
You ever play it actually on the Amiga?
I never played it actually on the Amiga, no. Should I?
So, map your Mr. controller to be a mouse.
Oh, yeah, I know how to do that.
Your left trigger is click to move. Your right trigger is shoot. Feels awesome. And I suspect that a lot of the humor of that game is probably lost in the console conversions, including the opening theme song "War Has Never Been So Much Fun" with lyrics.
Oh, that's
I think
good.
is only on the Amiga version. Like, it's much more of a parody. I find on the Amiga, it's much more like dark humor. Like, you get some of that in the conversions, but go for the pure version and appreciate these weirdos. What made Sensible Soccer and then this.
Oh, Sensible Soccer's 100% legit, by the way. In case I didn't.
And frankly, most of the 2000s era Football Manager games, if you want to get into, frankly, Football Manager is the best sim ever made, and I will hold to that. But people ignore it because of sports.
One of these days, I'm going to get really into those.
Yeah.
And then probably die, hopefully on a boat.
There are people from small countries in Southeast Asia who will travel to see fifth-tier English soccer teams because they became huge fans of them through Football Manager.
Just through the spreadsheets on the screen, basically. I love it.
I got to add one more, which is that insert credit fan favorite Dog's Life is also British.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Croc Legend of the Gabos, right? That's a good one. What's the one game? There's a game called Red Dog. Do you know Red Dog?
Yeah.
Do you know this game?
I
Is
do.
that
I
a
like it.
ROM hack of Dog's Life?
No, it's Red Dog.
Dreamcast game.
It's for
Is
the
it-
Dreamcast. Red
Is
Dog's
it a ripoff of Clifford? Is it like a Russian
No.
knockoff of Clifford?
Red Dog is like what would happen if Star Fox was about a truck and instead of characters and dialogue, it's inscrutable. It looks like a truck that looks somehow like it listens to ska. I don't want to talk too much about this game because it's too important to me.
Okay.
I like it.
Then let's move on. A while ago, we discussed the Jean Dielman of video games because it was recently...
Sight and sound poll.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
exactly. The Sight and Sound poll recently...
Just a clown could see where this is going.
Collaborated to... Yeah, a clown could see where this is going.
A clown with Coke bottle glasses on, Mr. Magoo, the clown could see where this is going. Keep going, though. Let's hear it.
Yeah, well,
Let's keep going.
Enter British GQ.
Brit GQ.
Tried to make their own Sight and Sound poll, as it were.
Hey, was it Britsy GQ or was
It was
just
Britsy
Bitsy
GQ.
GQ? Oh, okay. I don't know. What do I know?
They drafted a list of the 100 best video games of all time by getting lists from over 200 game developers and journalists and streamers and other personalities.
Okay, I hope your question is, let's talk about why we don't want to talk about this. Is that the question?
Okay.
No, sorry. What was the question? Sorry, let's hear what the actual question was about this.
What is the inherent difference between trying to do this for games than trying to do this for movies? Why doesn't this work for video games?
That's a good question to answer with talking about why we don't really want to talk about it. I think, in all honesty,
Yeah.
or why I don't want to talk about it. People who watch movies watch lots of movies. People who play video games don't necessarily play a lot of video games.
Movies are a lot shorter, first of all.
I looked at that list, and to say I have no comment would be an overstatement. So it's first of all, number one question I keep getting asked about that list is, were you consulted for the list? And the answer is no. And then there's the follow up question, why not? The follow up answer, I don't know. And then don't snitch tag me on Twitter. Why didn't you consult this guy? You don't have to do that. It's okay. I got my own thing going on, going very well.
Mhm.
I'm wearing a shirt that's a replica of a shirt Ernest Borgnine wore in a movie. That's how well I'm doing with my own sight and sound.
Was it in a laser mission?
No, it was in From Here to Eternity.
Oh.
I wish it had been in Laser Mission.
Not as good as Laser Mission, but
Can you imagine if your last name was Borgnine, dude? Are you a goddarn Star Trek god?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
what's going on?
no joke. When they announced 7 of 9 as the name of a new
Yeah.
Borg, I was like,
The Borgnine. There's 9
Are
boards.
we being earnest here? Like,
Oh, very good.
when I was a teen child, I was like, come on. But about this dumb list.
Yeah, you were saying movies are a lot shorter than video
Movies
games.
are a lot shorter,
Yes.
so you can consume a lot more of them. I know this to be true because I watch a lot of movies as well, and it's so much easier to do that than I'm trying to play Wild Arms right now, and that's it's about 40 hours. That's gonna happen to me, and I will have had about the same impression after 40 hours as I've had now after the first 3, more or less.
I've got to say, I'm a little delighted to see Breath of the Wild at number 1 after my very long, pure podcast content monologue in a previous
About how it
episode
soon will
about
be.
how we need to dethrone Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
And they goddarn did it, Goddarn Statue of Liberty on the beach, Planet of the Apes. They goddarn did it.
I was actually consulted for this
I
list.
bet you were. What do you?
What do you got? Give us the dirt.
I don't know. They just said, give us 10 games, basically.
I liked a tweet you'd made about it, and then I scrolled into the replies and saw that you had mentioned me by name in a reply without tagging me, and I had never been more moved in my life. I was very glad to have not been tagged, but to have been mentioned by name and had a video linked to. That's how to do it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Because I had in that video talked about basically this very thing, and I'm glad somebody cited it. So thank you.
Yeah, it was a little frustrating because I think that it's really imperfect trying to make a list like this. And I think the reason is that a lot of the prestige games that people immediately go to are of a certain type.
And certain vintage
Yeah.
as well.
And a lot of games that are of that type are kind of dismissed out of hand.
Yeah.
And I cited a few of them: strategy games, competitive
Driving
multiplayer games, arcade games, driving games. Outrun was not on this list. StarCraft was not on this list.
Yeah, did you put Outrun on your list?
Yeah, that's
You
weird.
put Outrun on yours, right? Did
I
you?
didn't, because I thought it was a given. I thought it was a given, Tim.
That's how they get you.
I was
That's
voting strategically.
how the worst movies win the Best Picture at the Academy
Yeah.
Awards, because of the runoff. That's how The Last of Us ended up at the top. It was on too many lists.
I think if he had said, make your list of 100 games,
Yeah, 100.
100
Yeah.
games, and
Yes.
and then you would cross-reference it, yes, it would have been an impossible task, but
Would have been better.
it's the only way that you can really
Yeah.
do a list like this. You can't just ask people to do 10 games. And
Yeah.
also he said, just put 10 games. Figure out make of this task what you will. And I said,
Yeah.
okay.
And
Okay.
people are just probably submitting them in alphabetical order or whatever. There's no ranked, right? There's no is there no ranked choice? Okay, I mean, I'm not going to make fun of the list. It is cool to have a thing like that and have it in the mainstream press. It's very funny and personally rewarding for me for Breath of the Wild to be at number 1 after my long speech in previous episodes. It's also very rewarding to see The Last of Us be at number 2 after my long 3-hour long speech about that very thing. I don't really like The Last of Us. I made a video about it for a specific reason, and that was the reason was to get it to just when it's somewhere like that to
Point to it.
That list is very interesting to me. I scrolled through it. I looked at it. There's like nothing. Almost nothing from the 80s is on there, right?
There's barely anything from the 90s
There's
too.
like 3 games from before 2000.
yeah.
Yeah.
One of them was Age of Empires 2.
Yeah.
One of them was the original Super Mario Brothers, which came in at like 96.
Yeah.
Blasted.
Final Fantasy VI was on
I
there.
don't think Pac-Man was on this.
Pac-Man was not on there. No. Tetris
No.
is number 3.
Yeah, where's Goddarn Sonic?
It was very interesting to see how new all of the games were.
It's not the list I would have made.
Isn't the Academy Awards like chosen by filmmakers, or am I making that up?
It's filmmakers and critics.
It's
both.
members of the Academy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because by choosing, people who are currently like video game tastemakers, I just feel like it is very skewed toward Breath of the Wild being the best game of all time.
Well, it's not just tastemakers. It was like developers, influencers.
Okay, it was some. Okay.
Yeah, like they asked like half of Naughty Dog. I guess he reached out to Japanese developers
yeah.
as well and did not get a response.
Or it was like, we need a year to clear this with legal or
You're
whatever,
right,
which
yeah.
having worked for a couple Japanese video game developers in my life, I can say that feels a million billion % correct. I remember the hoops people had to jump through when an interviewer sent questions to Goichi Suda like, what soccer team do you like right now or whatever, and it's like he's just like asking like 18 people to sign off on it. Like it would be very hard given just the way they work at a lot of those companies. You're not going to get Shigeru Miyamoto to submit a list, right?
No.
What would that even look like?
Let me ask my wife is what that list would look like.
That's a future question for the Insert Credit Show, is what would Shigeru Miyamoto's Sight and Sound poll 10 best games
Let me
list
tell
be?
you, his games would probably not make this list because they wouldn't be story based because
that's the thing.
Uh-huh.
So we have a problem and here's the fundamental, here's the actual, I believe, answer to your question, Jaffe, because I've thought about this way too long. The fundamental difference is that in film, genre makes no difference in the experience, the mechanical experience of engaging with the film. In a film, you watch a horror movie basically more or less the same way you watch a love story, which is you sit in a chair and you watch it, right? Whereas with video games, there are completely different modes of control, settings you put your brain in. Some require people, some famously do not. Video games run a wide spectrum of quote-unquote genres. We call them genres. We should, and I believe this is something that some intrepid video game reporters and writers should try differentiating between a genre and a format. There's a difference between a genre and a format. When we say format, it usually means, is it on PlayStation or is it on Xbox? Format is, in my opinion, in all my videos, I always say genre and format. Genre is like fantasy, format is action adventure, right? We should use the word format. So what we saw was a very restricted focus in terms of the format on that list, and a lot of it was single-player action adventure format games. We shouldn't call action adventure a genre in video games, right? It's not a genre.
Sure. Yeah. Fantasy would be the genre of
Zelda.
Zelda.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, and I try to be humble with a lot of these lists because you're right. A lot of these games, it is difficult for me to get to the level of true understanding with a lot of these games because some of these games are just rabbit holes that you go down.
Yes.
There are people who just only play NetHack, and that is their thing. Dwarf Fortress.
How is Dwarf Fortress not on there?
Yeah,
seriously.
That's completely that's ridiculous.
I would put Factorio on this list. Factorio crazies are a different breed.
We are double overtime.
I have to say.
GQ, if you want a 100 games list, just send me an email. I'll get it for you.
While we have the opportunity and while we're close to the subject, I'd like to address how IGN reviews games.
Oh boy.
I know those guys.
They're one of the few major game news sources that still provides direct numerical score ratings in their game reviews. That's kind of becoming
that's true.
a dying practice. What are the benefits and drawbacks of putting a number on a game?
Well, it's funny because Eurogamer just went back to a numbered score system.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, after abandoning it for a while.
They abandoned
You know
it.
what, guys? I have a breaking news as of the recording of this podcast is happening. This is like breaking right now. IGN has given The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom a 10 out of 10.
Oh, there you go. A perfect game.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Can't do it better.
I can't believe it.
Tens of the Kingdom.
Tom Marks, who reviewed that game, said that he would give it an 11 out of 10 if he could.
Oh,
He
no.
liked it a lot.
Why didn't you let him?
The old Spinal Tap.
I don't edit the reviews. That's Dan Stapleton.
That's the opposite of like 99% of Yelp reviews that say they would give something zero stars if they could.
Yeah.
Why are you censoring your reviewers that they can't give their games 11s?
I'm not in charge of the reviews, my friend. I run the news.
People love to count how many 10s out of 10 Edge has ever given. Isn't it like 24? Why do I know that off the top of my head?
I would send a tersely worded letter to Dan Stapleton saying, "Excuse me, why didn't you let Tom Marks give Tears of the Kingdom an 11 out of 10?"
Yes.
That would have made headlines.
Yeah, please write to Tom Stapleton right now.
Oh, man, people are popping 6s in the user reviews.
Of course.
We can ignore those, though.
Of course. I mean, there's always going to be naysayers.
I read the 6 that the kids were mad about today, and it was a pretty good review. Go on.
Oh, yeah. I actually, I skimmed that. I still haven't seen any footage of Tears of the Kingdom somehow. I'm going in fresh.
Yeah.
I ran a website for a minute, a commercial website.
That was a good website. I know that one.
And when Eurogamer got rid of their scores at the time, their 10 out of 10 scores, and went to badges, we seriously considered following in their footsteps because I actually rather like their badge system. The way that it worked was they would give just games that they didn't want to necessarily recommend no badge. They would give a recommended badge, and then they had the Editor's Choice Award. And I thought that was a pretty good way of being like, this is the stamp of approval on this game. The problem was, and I think this speaks to how broken game reviews are in general, is that people are focused on the score to the exclusion of everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you look at Metacritic and the way that people talk about Metacritic and the scoreboard watching around Metacritic. Go to a Resetera thread sometime and see people taking bets on what the Metascore is going to be. And people get legit upset when there's 1 point below. And if your website is not part of that game, that meta game, I suppose you could say, people just don't pay as much attention to you. And I don't like that at all. I think that system is really horrible, honestly. But I think that Eurogamer probably saw a measurable traffic drop from going to the badge system because they couldn't be put into that Metacritic churn.
And even as an independent video game developer, if we don't make it to a Metacritic review rating quickly, it's an indication that the game's just not gonna do anything, because like you need to have that score. Like it's such a part of the ecosystem at this point. It's like a shaky pillar, but it's a pillar, and it's still in there. I was just talking with my publisher about like how we will hopefully get to an 80 Metacritic within the first week. Or else, like it's not like tied to any milestones for us, like it will be with some other companies, but it's like an indication of how we can push the game post-launch and this kind of stuff. And it sucks, but like I did a campaign to try to get more people to review Hyper Gunsport because it doesn't have a Metacritic average, and it's just like it puts your game like under the radar if you don't get it. It would have an aggregate if it were all for the same platform, but all of our reviews, we have like just under 4 reviews on one platform and then 1 each on the rest. If we combined them all, we'd be good, but you got to have 4 to get the aggregate number.
It really reduces games to the level of product review, which has been a thing that has been something we've all been talking about for a long time. And I think that system is more entrenched than ever, unfortunately.
I mean, I want to answer this from my own experience, which is I was really disappointed. I haven't reviewed many games, but I reviewed Deadly Premonition for 1UP before I worked there properly. And I gave it, we did letter grades like you're in school. I don't remember what grade I gave it, but I gave it a grade that Metacritic interpreted as a number that was well below the number I would have given it.
Yeah.
And I emailed them and explained, actually, hello, I'm the reviewer. If you want a 1 out of 100, it would be blank. And they said no.
Wow.
that it has to adhere to their conversion system.
They don't want to have to answer to the idiots.
Yeah, because like a C is a 7 or whatever.
Yeah, they measure the amount of positive adjectives used in the review.
It was a number conversion from the letter that they decided that was their formula.
It was like B- was an 80.
Something like that. Yeah.
Just imagine a kid who has nothing else to do-ish that he emails Metacritic about the score not being right. They would rather not deal with him than deal with you.
Yeah.
In that case. And that's really kind of sad.
So my only point with that is that if the Metacritic score is important to you as an outlet, you might want to just give them the literal number.
Frank, according to Wikipedia, you gave it a B.
Mm-hmm. A B?
A B, and which I think should we see? Should we see what they gave it?
Yeah, let's see what they gave it.
If you can find 1up.com, it's...
I'm excited.
Well, it should still be on Metacritic. They must have changed their number because they have a 75. I remember it being below 70.
Wow.
Whoa, yeah, that's weird.
That's very low for a B.
Yeah, it says 75 here.
Was there an A+?
But I think
is that a 10?
B- should be... I don't know. I think
I remember it not being green, and this is a green 75.
Okay.
I remember being upset because it was a positive review.
I know Metacritic changed where the green was to be like 70 and below.
Okay.
Or sorry, 70 and above, and then once you're below 70, or if you're above 70, it's green. If you're at 70 or below, then it's like yellow. and then below 50, you're red.
Anyway,
something
point
like
is,
that.
it was not the number I would have given it at the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we don't love numbers, but they are necessary to get attention, is what
Yeah.
we're saying
Yeah.
here. All right. Here's my next question. If ESRB ratings were literal, what games would actually be rated for everyone, for teens, or mature?
Call of Duty would be rated for teens.
That's right.
Don't most Nintendo games get E for everyone anyway? And I would venture to say that they intentionally
That's
go after
accurate.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they're going for
families at large. So
that. Wii Sports, E for everyone.
yeah, Wii Sports is the defining E for everyone game.
Yeah.
By the way, not on that list, the GQ list. I would say that it should
Weird.
be.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
I don't like it, but
It's not
why
only
not?
good; it's a good game.
I just don't like it. I'm just a hater.
Wii bowling is
All right,
good.
I'm going back to this question. Sorry. Part of the reason that nothing old is on there is you can't play anything old. Like,
Uh-huh.
It is a problem.
That's
yes.
true. It is hard to play stuff that's old.
I mean, that's part of the reason, but I think more of the reason might be that the people asked hadn't played things that are old.
that I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, but also they can't, and
They
also
consulted me, but they didn't consult me. Like if they had
Yeah.
come to me and said, "Kat, should Diablo 2 be on this list?" I would have been like, "Well, obviously."
right. That's a
Mhm.
top 100 game. Yeah.
It's a good one.
It wasn't on the
But
list.
I mean, not only is it hard to get to the old games, also like watching a movie from the 30s and watching a movie from yesterday is kind of the same experience. You just sit down
Uh-huh.
and do it. Whereas like there is a lot of friction to play an old game. Like
Yes.
there's some friction for old game.
Not
Sorry,
in
for
my
old
house.
movies, but well, sure, Brandon, but also like
Oh,
if-
definitely
if,
not
That-
at my
no,
house.
I was being glib. I agree with you. I agree with you.
But also, I mean, like, if you needed to emulate something with a weird arcade controller, that's
sure.
not the
You couldn't
game,
do it
right?
Most of the time.
Like,
Mhm.
you can't play, I don't know, Mad Planets at home. Mad Planets is fantastic. So,
You can't play Sonic, that spinning one. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog.
oh, yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
true. You don't want to, though. So
I
that's
kind of
okay.
do. I know it's bad, but I want to play it.
It was at California Extreme one year. You didn't get to play it?
I must not have gone that year. Son of a heck.
I played through it. It was terrible. Anyway.
Doesn't seem like a good game.
We have a monthly episode on our podcast where we examine an RPG and play it over the course of a month and ultimately do an episode about it. And there are some games that are quite difficult to find outside of emulation, like Skies of Arcadia. We were just talking about that one. Very
Mhm.
difficult. And whenever you get into a situation where emulation is required, people tend to check out, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
Real shame.
That's what they say. They go, ew.
Mm-hmm.
If you get to a Kodelka episode, let me know. I just played
Anyway,
through Kodelka.
what was your question?
Yeah, so these games are not rated for everyone, or
So
maybe
the question
they were at
is
one
what
point.
games should be
Oh yeah,
rated for everyone?
what games would be?
If the ratings were literal, what games would be for
Literal.
everyone, for teens, or mature?
For everyone.
Flappy Bird, Tetris.
Candy Crush.
Grand Theft Auto games would all be rated T for teen.
True.
Mortal Kombat would be rated T for teen.
That delisted game where you have to do your taxes, that would be rated mature.
I would venture to say
Yes.
that most games that would be considered big deal this year, Jedi Survivor, Starfield, I would put those in T for teen category.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd put Starfield in EC, early childhood category, to be honest.
Nice.
I think an M for mature game. Would Disco Elysium be an M for mature? I
Sure.
would venture
Hmm.
to say yes.
I think so.
You have to be able to read, so...
Yeah.
I think all David Cage games are for mature people.
Yeah.
He's back.
No, those games are for everyone.
There should just be a toddler, like an L for losers rating. That would be David Cage games.
Rated L.
Rated L for losers. That would be good.
Yeah.
You know, I tried to get my game rated EC, early childhood, because it contained no violence of any kind.
Yeah.
And the ESRB would not let me. Do you know why?
Why?
I feel like I've talked about this before. I mean, I know I have. They would not let us. Do you know why? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Because my game did not prominently feature any characters visible in cartoon shows on this list of cable television networks.
Really?
Airing between the hours of 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. or whatever. Like, that was like literally...
That's part of it.
In other words, the ESRB, again, you give them money, you write down, I promise, it ain't no nudity. I think my game is a T for teen. And they say, okay, you can put our logo on your box. But if you're wrong, we get to kill you, right? Like, it's like that's basically what you do. They are a guy, not even in a basement. He's in a woodshed. He is not his mom's basement. He's in his dead grandma's woodshed, right? Doing zero work. However cynical you've been about persons who do zero work, that's the ESRB. They are doing nothing.
They do a lot of checking up on stuff, but
that's a robot.
We did have an interesting.
That's not a real person.
Moment where Hypergun Sports rating, we almost got in trouble because we hadn't disclosed sexuality, because there's like 2 pixels of cleavage that you can see. On one lady. So we had to have sexuality because the suggestion of the existence of breasts.
So my video game Video Ball had to be flagged for cartoon violence, which made me like genuinely lose every single
ball?
Yeah, made me lose every single ounce of disrespect. Putting me toward complete apathy for the ESRB is they didn't want to be held liable to someone's mom accusing the game of not having violence on the back when you can fire a projectile at a ball. I don't know.
I'm going to choose an M. I'm going to say Baroque. I was trying to choose a video game that is like obtuse enough a teen wouldn't be interested in it. Some would, but
yeah, there's you may underestimate the teens these days.
Yeah, Baroque's probably not the right answer because
teens these days play some weird, crusty filth in terms of their video games. They like some weird stuff.
Oh, maybe mature would be like the original Pac-Man or like any arcade game from the 80s, because you have to be over 40 to like
to have to know about it. Skies of Arcadia, because you have to be over the age of 30 to have a Dreamcast. Is that the law?
I think that's the rules.
I've got a Dreamcast.
And you're over 30.
Play some Red Dog.
You know what? Let's take a break. We'll be right back after a quick message. This message is endorsed by the Insert Credit podcast and not the individual panelists. This is the Insert Credit Quick Break. I'm Alex Jaffe, and this week's episode of Insert Credit is sponsored by Sully, a very serious RPG. Sully is a 16-bit style role-playing game that gives the Venture Brothers treatment to the classic JRPG. Made by several members of the award-winning team behind Dungeons of Dreadmore, PC Gamer's Indie Game of the Year in 2011. Sully is set in a world where adventurer is a real profession, where demons conquer the world by corporate tactics, and where you can go to magic school to get a magic job and pay off your magic loans, only to ask yourself, after 20 years, where has all the magic gone? Sully looks like Phantasy Star 4 on the streets and plays like Valkyrie Profile in the sheets. Think a little Final Fantasy X, a little Super Mario RPG, and you'll have a pretty nice idea of what Sully's going for. Go to sullyrpg.com/Steam to wishlist Sully, a very serious RPG, on Steam today. Or go to sullyrpg.com/list to join the mailing list. A public demo will be available very soon. That's sullyrpg.com/Steam and sullyrpg.com/list. And if you would like to advertise on Insert Credit, we can almost certainly make that happen. Our rates are affordable, our terms reasonable, and I'm generally pleasant to talk to as the person taking sales. Just email show@insertcredit.com. Welcome back to Insert Credit. Our next question comes to us from previous guest Azurelore Korrigan, who asks, what medium do you think holds the most potential or otherwise is most compatible for a faithful and satisfying video game adaptation?
What media? Okay.
Yes, which medium is best suited to be adapted into a video game?
Like music? Or when they say medium...
adapted into a video game.
I thought it was the opposite way. Yeah.
Like a format?
Yes. Does a book make a better video game? Does a movie make a better... Right.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
I have an answer for this, but I want to hear yours.
Well, let's get the list together. Right?
We got plays, we got books, we got short stories, we got movies, we got short films, cartoons, sports.
I think sports is a medium because you can turn it into almost any... If anything, sports games are too narrow.
True.
Mm-hmm.
We have Sims and we have arcade games, but we don't have enough sports RPGs. we don't have enough sports first-person action games, I suppose you could say, along the lines of like Neon White.
We don't even have a sports open world action adventure, Grand Theft Auto, where you're a kid who plays basketball. We don't even have that.
Yeah.
That's weird, isn't it?
There's a lack of imagination in what we could do with sports.
They're trying to do more of that stuff with some of those 2Ks now, right? Like they're with the career modes and stuff. They're trying to
2Ks and the Maddens and the FIFAs,
where you befriend Jake from State Farm.
But it's not like the point.
They've been doing those for several years now.
Yeah,
and they are sponsorship opportunities.
Right.
You literally walk into casinos and pull the little slot machine to try and get game coin, virtual currency, which is used to update your character. You drink a lot of Gatorade. You wear Gatorade branded items.
There's the news about those modes. Whenever there's one of those modes, never extends beyond a single blog post that says there's this mode. That's basically it.
Yeah.
It's like I played the Madden one and I felt nothing.
And yet, these games are like the most profitable games every single year.
I think we could easily have a game as good as The Last of Us that's about a soccer player.
Huh?
You know, right? As good as, like, as critically acclaimed as. A game easily as good as God of War 2018 that's about a basketball player.
My friend has not played Marco and the Magic Football, it sounds like. So.
Marco. I like that guy.
Is that what it's called? Did I just make that up?
Man, no, it's called
Marco's
like
Magic Football.
I don't know. Marco's something like Marco's Soccer Kid.
Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy
It's
City.
called Marco's Magic Football.
Didn't it also get translated into Soccer Kid or something like that?
Probably.
There's a soccer RPG visual novel sim on mobile. Forgive me, I don't remember its name. In which you are an older gentleman who smokes and talks to his cat.
That rules.
And goes through existential crises and burnout in between managing a soccer team that may or may not be losing.
Nice.
I mean, there's Fire Pro Wrestling games have had stories for a long time. You know, there's all that. But yeah,
and there's Deer Boys. We always talk about Deer Boys on the Super Nintendo. Remember that, Frank?
Mm-hmm.
Deer Boys were turn-based basketball game. Pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But there should be more.
Well, there's Captain Tsubasa, too, right?
Certainly.
That big old captain.
Football drama, by the way. The game I was just talking about.
Oh, very good football drama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like the serialized anime is a good format for video game, but
they don't want to do that.
That's more because of the content tending toward being written by video game people, and so or like video game enjoyers, so it winds up being video game adjacent, so it's just easy. There's always a bunch of gamey concepts in there.
I think the best format that is transferable to just makeable as a video game is car. Real easy to just make car into video game.
Automobile?
Yeah, to just say, I'm going to say car is video game.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to make a suggestion. I think the most adaptable medium into video games is the tabletop RPG.
Oh, the TTRPG.
They have their own sets of rules. They have all this world building that's built into the setting.
It's not far enough away for me to say that, because like put a screen element in there and then it's a video game, you know? Like
yes, that's why it's so easily adaptable. I mean, Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy can be traced back to tabletop RPGs.
But I'm saying I'm not sure it's far enough away that I would fully call it an adaptation, you know? It's almost like if I'm playing a Carcassonne on my television screen, I feel like it's a port, not an adaptation, you know?
Would you call Baldur's Gate an adaptation of Dungeons and Dragons?
I would call Baldur's Gate an adaptation of the Forgotten Realms series of fantasy novels.
Yeah. I mean,
Pathfinder is more or less, say, an adaptation of the tabletop rule set.
Well, there you have it.
Cyberpunk 2077?
Right.
That's very much an adaptation of a...
But it's something you can play on your own, so that makes it very different. I don't know.
That's true. But let me tell you, you feel like you're playing it with other people. Some of those battles are about as much fun as getting on Twitter.
Massively single player.
Yeah, that's my cyberpunk jokes there, everybody.
Jeff,
Thank you.
I think I was doing you a disservice because I was sort of thinking of board games on the whole, which is a totally different thing. So
no, that's not what I was talking about.
But the Japanese Jinsei Game of Life video game is legit.
one of the most popular games of all time.
It's very good.
All right.
So that's a board game.
I think the sort of like kids cartoon made for syndication, you know, where like the first season's like 50 episodes.
Oh yeah.
That adapts well into action games because it's just like they have these tight scripts and that could just be translated into levels of an action game.
DuckTales, dude.
Yeah.
That moon level, that music, you hear that? That's a joke. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Did Tim fall into
But each
that?
one
That's
of
a
those
joke.
levels
No,
is
he didn't.
basically like you feel like it's an episode of the show, right? Because there's not much more to that show than Scrooge goes to a crazy place because he heard there's money, right?
Yeah.
Like that's DuckTales.
Sometimes you learn a lesson about capitalism.
Yeah, you learn that at the end of this game.
And sometimes you rewrite history.
That's true.
Yeah. That's sort of like Monster of the Week format, I think.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
good stuff.
translates pretty well into a video game because especially if it's a licensed property, you can often tell stories that fit the canon and don't disturb anything.
Mhm.
My actual answer is a humble rhythm game because
Music.
it's very easy to gamify music, so to speak.
yeah.
And we've seen it many times over the years.
I like that.
Music is a game, yeah.
Here is my next topic. What's something you wished video games would do, they eventually did, and now you've had enough?
Oh, good joke. I mean, good, no, not joke. Good question. Sorry. Yeah, good question.
Blasted.
I wanted basically Battlefield before Battlefield. I loved the idea of massive battlefields with tanks and planes and people on the ground all together fighting, I suppose, instead of making friends. I don't know. But then I played Battlefield 2042, and that game was too big.
Mhm.
It was too big of a game. I think individual maps had something on the order of 128 people. And what I learned was that actually Battlefield Bad Company 2 was the best in the series because it was on a smaller scale. And not trying to go that big was maybe a benefit. So what I once dreamed of, I no longer dream of it because I've played it and it's fine.
Yeah, which of your dreams have died from overexposure is what
My
I'm
dream is
asking
dead.
here.
I'm going to tell you, here's the thing for me. So I have two things to say, and these are genuine answers. One is there is a video game I have always wanted. I've wanted it since I was 8 years old, and god darn nobody's ever made it. So that's why I'm making it right now. Won't get into any specifics. Number two answer, I always wanted a video game that I can get online, right? And I can play, and I can buy items and change my character's clothes and purchase a house. And there's thousands of other people in there doing the same thing. I remember having this idea in the 1990s, right? Ooh, that would be so much fun to get online and play something like Legend of the Red Dragon, except there's graphics, right? That would be so much fun if there was a Final Fantasy. And then they goddarn made a Final Fantasy 14, and there's just too much of it.
It's a lot.
In a good way, but also it's like I distinctly wanted Memorpages for a while as a hypotheticality. And then the first one appeared, Ultima Online, and I was like, all right, it wasn't really a Memorpage. Let's let it slide, though. And then EverQuest showed up, and I said, no, not that one, right? And then I saw World of Warcraft, not that one either. Kingdoms of Amalur, what else was there? Lord of the Rings Online, Star Wars The Old Republic, The Matrix Online. I'm just like, no, repeatedly. Final Fantasy 14, why not? Right? But it's just that, and also Destiny. I played Phantasy Star Online, and I was like, this is it. This is the future of video games. Phantasy Star Online. It's like Diablo, but it's Phantasy Star, and it's, you use a controller and buttons. And then there was Monster Hunter, which is just perfectly Phantasy Star Online with a little bit more game design on it. And then there's Destiny, which is Monster Hunter with way too much more game design put on it. And I'm just like, all right, those games are cool. And they're just kind of on the phantom shelf in the back of the bad part of my brain, where I don't touch them. Thank you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
There was a time in my life when I wanted more like serious stories and serious issues to be tackled in video games. And there had been some, but I wanted that to be done with more seriousness and with greater energy put toward it. And now I haven't seen the people that have been doing it, at least in the AAA space. I think they could just not do it. I think they could just, if you're gonna do it, but don't try to put it in like a goofy arcade game. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like pick your battles, pick what you're gonna do. Don't try to do it all at once. Make the like amazing, deepest story ever told, but then accidentally subvert it by having me kill literally every person that's that exists in that world, that kind of stuff. So I still want it, but I wish people would do a better job.
All right, Frank, we got a minute left. What's yours?
I mean, I think it's just a variation of what Kat said. You know, my ambitions for games when I was young. Well, it's also kind of what Brandon said too. It's like giant world that I can explore forever, which I just do not. That's the opposite of what I want now.
Yeah.
But also I think that games are the best medium for telling a story. I don't think that. Like, no one should think that. I don't think that's true. It's the best medium for having an experience, yes, but not for like telling a narrative story. The game gets in the way of that. I'm pretty convinced of that at this point. So those two things, yeah.
All right, here's my last question before we wrap up. Imagine you were a video game news director, hypothetically.
Okay, I can go back to that. I'm good. Let's go.
Me too.
What counts as video game news?
Oh, God.
Well, that's a big question.
Who am I working for at this moment?
Just whatever gets the first comment to say slow news day. That's video game news to me.
Okay, actually, I am going to answer this from experience, which is one of my two news director roles was what used to be called gamasutra.com in my day, which is now gamedeveloper.com.
You can't even call it Gama Sutra anymore.
In this woke culture.
What does this world come to? These dang leftists.
I don't think anybody misses the name. I haven't.
Has anybody like hated on them for being woke?
Yes.
For changing the name they have?
Well, I don't know about the woke part, but they've hated on them for changing the name. Yeah. They probably have for the woke thing now.
Oh man, yeah. Oh,
so
man.
when I was there, I actually did define what a news story was, and it was based on the audience for that website. The audience for Gama Sutra was people who made or sold games, essentially. Like those are the two audiences. And so in order for a story to appear on the website, you had to answer yes to the question, does this story help inform people to make better games or sell more games? Like and that's it. Like anything else just did not count. Like that's my answer for that specific audience. But I think that the answer should always be like, what is your audience? What is your goal? And if your goal is as many clicks on social media to the website as possible, that's a valid goal. It's a terrible business, but like that could be a goal. It's just that has to be defined. And that's how you define what your news stories are. Kat, I want to hear from you.
Oh, okay. What you said, my colleague Reb Valentine has a very similar comment. Does this serve our readers?
Yeah.
Is a good test for whether or not we should be writing about a thing. Going back to journalism school, is it timely? Is it relevant? Those are good tests. I think that there are a few different categories of journalism. There's the service stuff that's like, this game is coming out blank, release date, that kind of thing, information about a game. And then there's more of the post-release, community-focused, analysis-driven, like what's the story, what's the overarching storyline going on around this game? Let's try and cover it. What new information and insight can we impart on this game? Why don't we interview a developer and write a headline around that? And speaking of headlines, I think that if you can't come up with a good headline around a story, it's probably a little bit of a non-story. So
90% is, I'm not exaggerating, to me that was 90% of a news story was the headline.
It's like the review score for a news story. Put a number in the headline and it becomes even more enticing, right?
It's true.
It is. That's not a joke.
People respond to big numbers.
Yeah, there's a number in there. Zelda sells 3.5 million in 32 seconds, right? It's
I hated those headlines. I hated number headlines. No, it's like those numbers don't mean anything. It's just white noise.
But people click on them and they really get going.
But the headline could be Zelda outsells blank, as opposed to sells white noise number.
Love the white noise numbers, though. That's my bread and butter.
Yeah, but Zelda outsells blank would have to, you'd have to have a real relevant blank that wouldn't be like a apples to oranges. So people in the comments would be like, those aren't even the same.
I don't see why we can't compare apples to oranges. Just do what you want.
Agree.
That's true.
Also, it's like Zelda's opening weekend comes between blank and blank. That's a much better headline.
Something like that, yeah.
However many million.
The thing I went for with insert credit when I was doing the news stuff was, have people heard of this? Do I think that people have heard of this? So it didn't matter if it was new or timely. It was just like, if if I felt that people probably didn't know about it in English, then it was worth writing about. And that's turned out to be true for that audience, but that's, we kind of constructed that audience to be that way. So, and that's always a question, like, if you're serving your audience, have you curated your audience, to be the audience that you want? Or do you have to work with the audience that showed up that, like, you might not want that audience depending on who they are? And
there's a lot of bad audiences out there.
There's some audiences you don't necessarily need to have. And it's a kind of related question to me is like, do you want to have comments on your news story at this point? A game developer doesn't have them anymore. Gamasutra used to. And it started to devolve to where the first comment was just like the same angry person every time. It wasn't like advancing the conversation in any way. Mm-hmm. So I guess to me, it's, you want to serve your audience, but do you also want to shape your audience a little bit and try to make them into better people?
You're also serving the industry because you are observing and commenting on and reporting on the industry, and you want to do it in a way that's knowledgeable about how the video game business works.
You need a lot of context.
What the current culture is, how video games are being made. And if good journalism is speaking truth to power and being able to inform people, like, it's quite important that you maybe approach your journalism from that respect. And I think the games media in general started as a hobbyist concern, and it started out as a promotional concern, and it's struggled forward over the years and taken some steps forward and some steps back. I think there's a certain segment that really deeply wants to be quote-unquote real journalists, and there's a certain segment that still cling to more of the hobbyist approach. And right now there's a great culling of games websites, unfortunately.
For sure.
Yeah.
Not that great.
And I've been wondering, actually, if you have thoughts about this working at IGN, because IGN, as I've perceived it, has gotten more into the like culture website arena versus, games website first and foremost. And, if that assessment is correct, then it sort of also changes your audience and how you speak to them, because you're speaking not just to the person who intrinsically knows every element of every game you're talking about, to people who like wandered here from a Marvel review or something, Marvel movie review.
It's true. I mean, IGN's been covering entertainment for 20 years, but in terms of building my team, we have to be able to cover entertainment, tech, even science, in addition to games, and that's a really broad remit. You have whole websites, you have whole publications dedicated entirely to tech. So what you end up having is Alex Steadman's on the entertainment beat. She does a phenomenal job there. Reb is like focusing on games. We just added Taylor Lyle. She's focusing on tech. And you're right that our audience is a catch-all. I think that IGN very much serves fandoms a lot of the time. It's a big fandom-oriented site. You could say it's a big hobbyist-oriented site. So it moves, and so that tends to color our news coverage, though we also can be a little bit of an industry trade at times.
Yeah, you're kind of trying to do everything all at once.
I do want to ask one more thing before we go on to our lightning round. Did everyone here always know what IGN stood for before looking it up?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, IGN.
I was there from the very beginning. Imagine Games Network.
Yep.
No, not always. No. And in fact, I was only just reminded.
Day one, Jerry, day one.
Celebrated our 25th anniversary, and Per Schneider gave us a big history presentation about IGN over the years. It was actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, I always assumed it was like international gaming news or something.
It's short for Igneous.
Well, there was a publisher called Imagine.
Yeah.
Type of rock.
That made published magazines like Game Players, Ultra Game Players. I think Frank's a fan of Ultra Game Players, aren't you?
What about fan of?
Really. They were all right. Don't hate on Ultra Game Players.
I wasn't reading it back then, so I can only look at it now.
Well, they were pretty legit. Right. So that's basically where IGN came from, and that's why I was reading. That's the reason I was reading IGN on day one. So
IGN64.com.
But I famously did not know what that the GIA was the GIA, and I called it Thegia. So
Thegia.
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
yeah.
The Gaming Intelligence Agency.
It's time for our lightning round. This week's lightning round was submitted by Yeso, one of our patrons at patreon.com/insertcredit.
Oh, that dirtbag.
Just give us a few dollars a month, and you'll get access to the forum where you can submit your own questions and topics, get monthly bonus episodes, and our regular episodes ad-free. This week, as per Yeso's suggestion, we're playing Brian Eno's Oblique Strategies. I'm going to generate one of musician and producer Brian Eno's 100 broad creative suggestions he wrote to encourage lateral thinking in the 1970s,
Okay.
and we're going to use each of them as a principle for designing a new video game.
Okay.
I bought Brian Eno's video that is in Tate mode. It's so cool. He made a Tate VHS, so you're supposed to put your TV on its side to view it correctly.
That's pretty legit.
It rules. Good job,
Sounds
Brian
like Brian's up to some stuff.
Our first suggestion is think of the radio.
Think of the radio. That's one of his
Yeah,
guiding lateral
is that
thinking.
Silent Hill? Is he talking about Silent Hill?
Game we have to think of the radio. It's Metal Gear Solid more, so yeah, right.
These are sure. I mean, I think what's interesting about
Outrun.
the radio
It's Outrun,
is
actually.
is like tuning it and finding broadcasts from beyond. So like.
Yeah.
I think it's a game about I don't know, finding ghosts or something, right? It's something where it always feels like there's infinite weirdness to tune into.
Sure.
I would play a visual novel about being a disc jockey.
Ooh, I like
Yeah.
that.
That'd be good. I think you should be able to tweak the radio knob on the Outrun cabinet, and as you drive across the country, the radio stations should cut in and out. And
Yeah.
if the music dies, you die. So you have to find the music whilst drifting. That's thinking of the radio.
To me, the radio was
Thank you.
growing up in the Bay Area. The radio was like a place to learn about new music and things because like they were playing a lot of cool, interesting stuff all the time.
They were playing a lot of Monster Truck Rally commercials also.
They 100% were playing Monster Truck Rally commercials. Yes, they were.
Sunday.
Your next one is you can only make one dot at a time.
One dot?
That's Pac-Man.
So not the game two dots then, I suppose.
Certainly not.
So he's basically saying
It's
you
Picross.
should make misleading videos for Instagram about your game that don't show what it actually is. That's how two dots.
Yeah, I think he's talking about like those.
You shouldn't do that. I'm saying
Those like quote satisfying videos where you can cut into something and you see the inside of it. Like they
Excuse
cut
me,
into
those
this-
are oddly satisfying,
Oh, yeah, they're oddly
not
satisfying.
normal
Oh,
satisfying.
don't like that. I don't like oddly satisfying stuff.
Your next one is cut a vital connection.
Cut a vital connection.
That's
Oh,
what I
it's
was
that cut the
talking-
rope game.
Yeah, it's cut the rope. Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, cut a vital connection though is like you know how it's really popular to have relationship building in video games. It's the opposite. You have to break up with a lot of people. So it's like opposite of it's relationship destroying, bridge burning.
Well, I don't think that's the opposite, because typically you do have to sort of sacrifice one relationship for another.
It depends.
Even a game like Death Stranding, where it's all about making connections, there's never you're never pitched having to cut one of the connections for the sake of anything else.
Yeah, it's unusual, so
Genuinely,
it'd be something.
All right. The most important thing is the thing most easily forgotten.
Oh, that's a Sierra adventure game. That's
Then I
where,
already
like,
forgot about it.
There was a paper clip in a desk drawer at the beginning of the game, and you're now
Oh,
at the end
yeah.
of the game, and you need a paper clip. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like that.
it's a good
That-
guiding principle for mystery writers.
it's just
as well.
memory. The game memory where you got to flip the cards over. I just flipped that one.
Accept advice.
Oh, video game designed around accepting advice. That's goddarn. That's the whole From Software, Dark Souls averse.
Oh, yeah.
You have to. The goddarn hints are part of the story.
Yeah.
The goddarn watching a YouTube video is part of the game. The goddarn summoning a ghost wolf to help you is part of the game. It's not
I
cheating.
would, when my first thought was like therapy, and to my knowledge, I don't know of any video games.
You mean
about,
the band? That's a joke because you said it with a question mark.
I don't know of any games about being a therapist or being in therapy, and it seems like a lot of gamers need therapy. So maybe that one.
Oh, have you played Eliza?
No, I haven't.
It's really good. You should check it out.
I played that game.
It's about therapy and tech.
There you go.
And it's really good. It's written by Matthew Burns. He does a good job writing
I
stuff.
went to an event where he talked about that game here in New York City.
New York City.
I done went there. The Strand bookstore. Y'all ever been there?
Mm-hmm.
A million miles of books or whatever it is they sloganize with. Anyway, giving people advice. I think it's cool, like strategy games where you give orders to units. I like the strategy games like Armodyne, where you give someone a long-term goal and then they accomplish bits of it over turns. I like the idea of like just suggesting stuff to people and then they behave procedurally.
And then they go, I can't do that right now.
So there's like a therapy game where you're a therapist and you have like 12 patients and you read the newspaper every day. I don't
Peter
know.
Molyneux's Black and White, in which you have an animal that you try to give suggestions to, but it kind of does its own thing for the most part. That, but good.
The Last Guardian.
I'm glad we got Peter Molyneux and David Cage both in this episode.
Yeah, an
there it
insert
is.
credit staple.
Our favorite dudes in quotes.
What wouldn't you do?
What wouldn't I do?
A game about overcoming your hang-ups or finding a way to push through and become a better person, leveling up.
That sounds a lot better than what I had, which is an advert game about that delightful treat, the Klondike bar.
No, yes. All
I'd
right.
say the Klondike bar game.
Okay, let's do one more. This one is just the word water.
Water?
Yeah, it just says water.
Wave Race 64.
Wave
Yeah.
Race 64 is good. Wind Waker as well. Water's so real, it makes us thirsty. IGN.com, back of box quote. That's my favorite joke. People actually
Our
believe
frothing
that IGN
demand.
said that
A
once.
game about water security, if we want to be depressing.
Let's be
Of
depressing.
course we do. Yeah,
Wait, I want to say something about back of the box quote.
please do.
Yesterday I found that the reprint of the book Console Wars has a positive quote from me from my negative review on Kotaku.com.
Oh, that's really good.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So good.
That's how it works.
That's the first time that's happened to me, and I'm delighted.
That's our episode. It's time for recommendations. Oh, I need to decide a winner of the episode.
Don't bother.
Yeah, I won't bother. Whatever.
Decide it later.
I'll figure it out. It's time for us all to make our recommendations. If there's anything
Recommendations?
that you'd like our audience to check out in any medium or any form of action, this is the point to do it, whether it's something you're working on or something you just think people would enjoy or benefit from. Now's the time to make yourself heard.
I forgot to mention that it was the insert credit anniversary like a month ago.
Hooray!
A month and 3 days ago. Yeah, so that's something. I recommend
22 years.
that you continue to listen to this if we keep doing it.
I recommend you listen to my podcast. It's about RPGs. We try to
play
go
those.
relatively deep. It's an interesting show. I would actually recommend checking out episode 400. We had Felipe Pepe on, who did the CRPG book, and really kind of dove into the meaning of the genre, the history of the genre, really touched on a lot of points. And it's a rich discussion topic, and it's fueled a lot of episodes of podcasts. So go check it out. Axe of the Blood God.
Neat.
I'm going to recommend my other podcast, Video Game History Hour, specifically the episode where we had Felipe Pepe on to talk about his RPG book.
Nice!
Wow.
Felipe Pepe.
If you listen to those back to back, you're gonna have a real
Probably a pretty good time, actually. Yeah,
Spicy
Go listen to
Pepe.
both of those. Yeah,
You got boxes full of Pepe.
He's a great guest.
he was a great guest. Yeah, I got to get him back.
Yeah.
I feel like I usually recommend things. The only thing I actually watched this week, because I've been deep in the trenches, was I Am a Hero. Not too bad. Not too bad. It's a live action adaptation of a manga about a regular man who happens to have a skeet shooting license, who
I like it so far.
enters the zombie apocalypse. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of weird. I'm not recommending it in my usual way of here's something for weirdos. Here's a normal movie you could enjoy. Give it a look.
Why not?
Here's my recommendation. If you enjoyed this episode of Insert Credit, and I hope you did, please rate and review our show wherever and however you can. You could also support us on patreon.com/insertcredit, where you could become a patron to submit your own questions, listen to monthly bonus episodes, and get our regular weekly episodes ad-free. You can also join our community at forums.insertcredit.com and send all business inquiries to show@insertcredit.com, or find a video of this episode on YouTube. This episode is edited by Esper Quinn, with music by Kurt Feldman. I'm Alex Jaffe.
I'm Frank Cifaldi.
I'm Tim Rogers.
I'm Brandon Sheffield.
And I'm Kat Bailey.
And send in your letters to get Tears of the Kingdom and 11 out of 10.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Well said, Jeffy.
Yeah.
Well said.
That was, and this is me stumbling over my sign-off. I panicked and forgot to write one.
Shoot.